Hello YouTube, this is the Powerbotch Podcast. We're talking about wrestling a lot here, and we like to talk about wrestlers who won the belts. We want to talk about the best matches. We want to talk about weird matches in our ongoing list of top 10s. Today, we are going to talk about the best wrestlers who never won the big belt. What's the big belt? Well, it has to be the top championship of any of the major promotions like WWE, WCW, TNA, NWA in its prime. I would argue not today anymore. AEW championship, stuff like that. With the qualifiers out of the way, we have one honorable mention this week. Who's that, John?
The honorable mention, it was Mr. Ted DiBiase. The reason why we put him as an honorable mention is that while he is not a recognized champion for any of those major televised promotions, he did actually have the WWE title in his hand and was defended, and I believe at 3 different house shows prior to the belt being stripped off him by Jack Tunney after he purchased said aforementioned belt from Andre the Giant. The reason why we didn't want to put him in our top 10 is because there's just enough of actual matches to happen where he was billed as the world champion that we didn't want to muddy the waters. We wanted to make sure that the individuals chosen in the top 10 were definitively never world champions for a major televised promotion. So, obviously, while we respect and love Mr. DiBiase and his work, he sadly just missed this top 10, but we'll probably have him in another top 10 quite soon, so don't worry about that, guys. But that then brings us to then number 10, Mr. Freed. Who do we have for number 10?
Dustin Rhodes, the Natural, Goldust. Debuted in 1988. He's been wrestling for a really long time, John, hasn't he not? 32 years of experience. That's crazy.
It's insane that he has been essentially, it's insane that he has been wrestling for this long, been with so many major promotions. He has been with WCW, WWE, Impact, and still AEW, and not had hands on any of their world titles.
And it's not like he wasn't mistreated in parts of his career. He was the Natural, the son of the grandson of a plumber. You know, he came in with all the fire behind him. When he turned into Goldust in the Attitude Era, this character, this gimmick with screaming attitude that would have been the ultimate middle finger in the face of the bourgeois American household if he won the belt. But his career sadly, it started, it stopped, could start again. He had his personal demons at some point. He broke up and got back together with WWE more often than any other wrestler, probably. I think he rejoined the company 5 times over his career. He hit some low points in TNA, but now that he's in AEW, we've all been surprised. We hear the chance, he still got it, or rather you still got it, He's hitting second stride here, and that's why he's only at number 10 on this list, because it is feasible. Maybe he could win the big belt going out. We don't know. And that's why he's only at number 10.
I feel like... Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I feel like he could do the Mankind thing. He gets a belt for a night, and he has that moment, and then a heel takes it off him right away. We have that bittersweet symphony moment that Mankind had. Remember when Mankind had the belt for one night, and then Triple H took it right back off him? I feel like we could have that, and it wouldn't feel bad, and I wouldn't be angry at it. I'd be just happy that he was able to say I was a world champion at one point. Just give him that moment, even for a week, even for a month. Just let him be. Just let him go out with like one accolade and say, you know what, I was finally a world champion, just like my dad. Just like my brother, I was finally a world champion. because Cody was technically the Ring of Honor World Champion.
Yeah.
So, for anyone gets at me for giving Cody that remark.
But plus, Cody still has at least 15 good years in his career, so he's definitely going to be a world champion at some point. Yeah. But with that out of the way, how about we go to number 9?
Number 9 is one that is probably not many of our younger fans, or maybe not some of the casual fans would be too familiar with. It's Magnum Ta. Magnum Ta had a wonderfully gifted career, which was sadly cut short by a career-ending car accident where a lot of his spinal plates had to be fused, sadly, after the result of said car accident. He only had about 9 years in total of in-ring work, and a lot of his stuff was during the Jim Crockett promotions of the NWA. But in those 9 years, he was very fortunate to become, a tag team champion for Florida Global Tag Team Championship in Championship for Wrestling from Florida. Really weird promotion name, kind of a long one there, kind of a bit of a... He was a 2-time NWA United States champion. He was earmarked for the World Championship. In fact, a lot of people have cited that he was going to be the next big thing. He was going to be the NWA's champion. That was going to be like almost the thing that would have been bigger than Ric Flair for NWA, but sadly with this car crash, it threw all of their plans out the window, and then Ric Flair ended up slotting into that position and then becoming the megastar that Flair has been. But Flair and other people from that time, like Arn, have always said that he was pure, raw, untapped talent that was just sadly cut short, and as a result, never got his hands on a major championship title. After his in-ring career, he done a little bit of commentary work here and there for the NWA, but sadly, he kind of petered off, and it didn't really. His wrestling career in every capacity was quite cut short from that. But he's our number 9 pick for the top wrestlers who never held a world championship, which brings us to number 8, my friend.
Jesse the Body Ventura. You may know him as the governor of Minnesota. You may know him as an actor in movies like Predator and The Running Man. You may know him for his very unique voice during color commentary on Saturday Night Main Event and other WWE products. But before that, he was an in-ring competitor as well. Debuted in '76. His gimmick was adopted, or paying homage, let's say this, was paying homage to superstar Billy Graham. The same guy, a certain Hulk Hogan also took inspiration from. And Billy Graham, we're not talking about Billy Graham because he won the big belt at one time. We're talking about Jesse Ventura. I just skipped a paragraph in my notes. Jesse Ventura, he had the looks. He was a big blonde guy. He had the bodybuilding look that Vince McMahon liked back then. He had the personality, the charisma, and he was given some chances. He was feuding with Hulk Hogan in '84, but he just never got there. And early on in the show, we were talking about something that didn't help him in his backstage standing when he was for wrestlers to unionize.
Yeah, which kind of just kiboshed a lot of his kind of put the roadblock in his career going forward. I mean, don't get me wrong, very talented in-ring commentator when it came to calls alongside Gorilla Monsoon and whatnot, but any sort of standing that he held in regards to the upper echelon, the main event card, was kiboshed quite quickly with that move, or that planned move of unionization inside wrestling. Good old Terry Bollea kind of getting involved there and preventing that there, if I do say so myself. I don't know if people. I'll assume you all know who that is. I don't want to be that Mark. Go. Oh, you don't know who Terry is? No, I'll work on the assumption you do know.
I have the perfect segue for the next one. Number 7.
That's the perfect segue. You caught me off there. Talk about perfect segues. Let's get to the perfect wrestler, Mr. Perfect, also known as Curt Hennig. A man who was just given the best gimmick for how he is. They called Bret Hart the excellence of execution. I felt like that should have been used for Mr. Hennig. Even little things like flipping a pencil and catching it with his fingers. He just seemed to have pinpoint accuracy in everything he'd do. And even when Vince McMahon was trying to mess him up, he still caught it. He just had an exceptional bit of luck, or maybe a bit of skill. He was just perfect in every way, in ring and outside of the ring. He is sadly a mid-card phenomenon is the best way I could put it. The guy, despite all of his in-ring talent, only ever got about as high as the mid-card belt. This is seen in the likes of WCW, where he was a US champion and tag teams champion, as well as inside WWE as the Intercontinental champion. Some would argue the best Intercontinental champion that the promotion had ever seen. But we never really seen him get a fair run or a chance to even hold the World Championship belt in either one of the promotions, despite even being voted numerous times in the top 500 wrestlers in the PWI, coming in at 98 one year, 55 another year, and number 9 in 1993. Bear in mind, when he was like 55, ranked 55 in the PWI for that there, that was literally in 2003. We're talking quite late into his career. That shows you just the in-ring acumen of the man. But sadly, it was for naught. He sadly passed away, though, at a very, very, very young age, leaving his son behind. You may have been aware of his son. He was one half of the B team. Mr. McGillicuddy, when he made his debut. What a terrible name. But yes, sadly, no longer with us, Mr. Curt Hennig. 2003 as well, passed away.
Meltzer called him one of the best all-around competitors this business has ever produced. I tend to agree. And when people these days talk about the IC title being a workhorse championship, Mr. Perfect had a hand in that.
He definitely did. Like how do you put it? It's like the perfect appetizer to the main event. Just he would put on matches that would just make you absolutely just jump out of your seat just because of the in-ring work. It was beautiful in-ring work. But still, sadly, never a world champion. Which brings us to our next one.
Number 6. His claim to fame is that he was childhood friends with a certain Mr. Curt Hennig. I'm talking about the ravishing Rick Rude. Debuted in 82, retired in 97. Just like his friend, he passed away before his time in 99. Had an interesting career as well. And some may even claim he's not qualified to be on this list. He was the 3-time WCW Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. This doesn't count. History of the belt is a hot mess, let me tell you that much. But WCW never treated this belt as the main one.
It was to a point. It was almost like a New Japan exclusive at one point, was it not?
This is another one entirely. It's a complicated history.
Yeah.
Short form is NWA stripped WCW of the rights to call their belt this, but they still had the old belt, so they called it the WCW Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, which was not the main title. They still had a heavyweight champion, world heavyweight champion. We're not talking about this. We're talking about the ravishing Rick Rude, charismatic, great in-ring worker. Some may ask why Rick Rude over Curt Hennig. It felt for us like it's a coin toss, and we mentally tossed that coin, and it landed on Rick Rude, the man who has his face painted on his trousers.
some of the most nuclear heat ever seen as well, especially against Jake the Snake Roberts. It was the most effective heel tactic in the world. There's nothing like seeing your wife's face on another man's body, especially when that man's body is glistening and absolutely stunning, may I add. This whole gimmick's been co-opted as of recent by a very controversial wrestler in NXT. We're not going to say much more than that, but it just shows the absolute brilliance of the Rick Rude character. That just the way to draw maximum heat out of that. They're just a wonderful and brilliant tactic. He had a bit of a weird and interesting latter half of his career as well. He worked for ECW for a time in a weirdly underhanded, almost kind of like higher power style role. Like he was in a robe and he was like hiding away and pretended to be this higher power as well, which was a bit strange because we had a higher power segment on WWE. And then he also, maybe he wasn't a higher power, but he was a mysterious figure in ECW. And then he also was part of DX. He was the manager of DX for a while before going back to WCW. What an odd use of a brilliant in-ring talent.
Well, maybe some people will find this pick controversial, but the next one isn't guaranteed. Number 5, take us away.
Well, blazing in at number 5, we have Owen Hart, the sadly way too gifted, brother of Bret Hart. There's no way we can talk about this, but this man's career was cut short. It's just so sadly cut short in 1999 again after the incident where he fell from the rafters with a failure of the mechanism on the cable he was suspended from, which led him to drop into the ring and pass away as a result of the injuries sustained. But before that, Mr. Owen Hart had a phenomenal in-ring career, working under a few different names. He was the Blue Blazer before that incident beforehand when he was first working for WWE or WWF at the time. Sorry, he had a wonderful in-ring career, in-ring angle with his brother Bret Hart over for the WWE Championship at one point as well. It was the storyline that was to break hearts to get a little bit cheesy with the verbiage there. Brother versus brother angle, some of the most intense stuff you would have seen. He was also a massive entity and one of the most cutting edge wrestlers in the Japanese side of the waters when it came to wrestling. He was been credited with, along with he's been credited as one of the ones that actually made the light heavyweight division mean something and actually propel the division forward. His accomplishments, even though he did not win the WWE Championship, he has been the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion at one point. He has also been the European Champion, the Intercontinental Champion, the Tag Team Champion, King of the Ring. Just a phenomenal amount of accolades, just never getting the top prize in WWE. But still, a wonderfully gifted and exceptional wrestler whose career was cut short by just awful circumstances.
Well, let's talk about number 4, Jake the Snake Roberts. Debuted in '73, retired in 2015 officially. He debuted in WWE in 1986. And I think it's fair to say he took the world by storm by his incredibly charisma. He's one of the best promos. When he opens his mouth, people listen. He's captivating to listen to, almost, like a snake, hypnotizing you, hypnotizing the prey into listening to him. And I don't think anyone can argue with that. He had in-ring psychology down to a science. He maybe wasn't the most athletic wrestler, the most technical, but he knew how to work a crowd, and boy did he work every crowd he wrestled in front of for a good part of his career. But like we talked about last week in Beyond the Mat, and we will eventually get to in the Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts, he had his demons, he had his substance abuse issues, which kind of put a stop to his career in the big leagues. Had to work a lot of the indies, was a liability to hire for the bigger promoters, and he found his way out of that. Unlike a lot of the guys on the list, Jake the Snake is still around. He's now in AEW. He's a manager. He's delivering great promo after great promo, but he never won the big belt.
Incredible wrestler. But as you're right, he was very, very kindly helped by none other than Diamond Dallas Page in this movie Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts. But I think we should talk about another Diamond stud. What do you think? That brings us to number 3, Scott Hall. Scott Hall, funny enough, did go under the name the Diamond Stud, was introduced to WCW via Diamond Dallas Page at one point as one of the Diamond Studs. He had a storied career, very controversial career, because anyone we're talking about seems to have a controversial career one way or the other, but that is wrestling. Controversy is cash if you want to listen to Mr. Eric Bischoff. And he has done some amazing things, even though he has not won any major promotions title. One of the biggest things...
Hold on, Ramon never won the big belt. Let me Google this, because that's the reaction you will get from most people. You just assume he was a world champion at some point, right?
You assumed, but no, he had an incredible intercontinental title run with Shawn Michaels, funny enough, and Big Daddy Diesel. But he never actually picked up the actual championship belt, which is insanity. Especially after like the incredible ladder match he had with Shawn Michaels, you'd think he'd be in line for a major push, but sadly wasn't the case. Which ended up leading to the first controversial moment in wrestling with the curtain call, where as he was leaving for WCW, he would embrace Big Daddy Diesel along with Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the ring, who were theoretically still working in the idea of kayfabe, where they wrestlers who were heels and babyfaces did not get along, and they openly embraced at Madison Square Garden, the mecca of WWE. They decided to break kayfabe and shatter it across the wall. Insanity ensued backstage, and it ended up leading to only one person taking the fall for that there, who wasn't Scott Hall. He would then go on to create more controversy by popping the barrier of WCW and start the inner workings that would lead to the New World Order of probably one of the biggest wrestling factions in wrestling history. And even in his time in WCW, he did not hold the World Championship belt at any time. Kind of insanity, if you ask me, again as well, because he was massively over in WCW. But his accolades include 4-time Intercontinental Champion in the WWE or WWF, and then pretty much television champion, 2 times United States champion in WCW, 7-time world tag team champion with Kevin Nash and the Giant for one of those runs in WCW, but never the prized world championship belt. I don't know how. Even in TNA, he had the tag team championship belt, and they were giving every old fogey the goddamn world championship belt.
Ron Killings at the time had the championship belt.
You know, it's just insane. Like, I don't know how. I don't know how they managed to do it, but like, yeah, he managed to go his whole career without the world title. Also, one of the individuals who was saved by Diamond Dallas Page, which is seen in the Resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts documentary for that program after his own personal demons got too much for him. Still currently working the indie scenes as an per appearance individual, and he's been inducted, I think, twice into the Hall of Fame. So under the not the NWA, under the New World Order, and also under under himself essentially. But yeah, like, storied career. Sadly, didn't end up in a championship, which brings us to number 2.
Roddy Piper. Woo! What a guy. He always felt like a top guy wherever he went, didn't he? Like, he was the big bad heel. He was in the main event of the first WrestleMania, and Meltzer called him one of the key figures in the growth of the WWF. In particular, his main event at WrestleMania alongside Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. He had a long wrestling career. He started in 1969, and retired in 2014. He did wrestle for a long time. He worked for WWE, he worked for WCW, had a stint in TNA, but he never quite captured the big belt. Most people probably remember him as one of the great talkers, one of the great promos in wrestling, especially the Piper's Pit segments in the WWF back then. And some might even remember him for his misjudged, let's call it Braveheart, body paint segment at one point.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. Yep.
But he did all the great stuff. He went out into the mainstream in the 80s. He became a movie star. He starred in They Live. He came to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and he was all out of bubblegum. But he never won the big belt back then, probably because he was always overshadowed by someone bigger, more muscular, and blonder.
Which is unfortunate, because that come to haunt him in his later career. Even in WCW, he managed to get inside the title picture so many times and still never caught that belt off Mr. Hogan. Oh, why am I can't say I'm surprised, because Mr. Hogan's stranglehold on on World Championships is second to none and quite renowned. But sadly, Piper being on the latter half of those angles, real shame, because like you said, one of the most solid in-ring mic workers. Goddamn, it's just a waste of great talent. Don't get me wrong, he's had some questionable segments as well, but yeah, quite sad.
Well, let's get to the greatest wrestler who never won the big belt and most likely never will. Number 1.
Number 1 is none other than William Regal. A man who debuted in 1983. He has had some exceptional in-ring matches, notably against one of I would say a local legend here in Belfast, the Belfast Brawler himself, Fit Finlay. If you ever go back and watch some of the most brutal and honest to God, I would say work shoot matches you'll ever watch, go watch Fit Finlay versus William Regal in WCW. You will see some of the most brutal matches ever televised in wrestling. But even that there didn't lead to any sort of championship gold inside WCW. Surprisingly, a lot of Mr. Regal's accolades ended up being in WWE, WWF. Now, don't get me wrong, he did have the television championship 4 times in WCW, but that was nothing compared to the belts, the slew of belts that he won in WWE. And it was a 5-time hardcore champion. He is a 4-time European champion. He is a 2-time Intercontinental champion, a 4-time World Tag Team champion with Lance Storm, the ill-fated Eugene, and Tajiri, as well as King of the Ring in 2008. So the man has had a historic career, a career full of accolades as part of the E, but sadly never ever able to capture the World Championship belt.
There's a little bit of controversy there because in 2007 he won the right to be Raw general manager, but shortly after got suspended for a wellness violation. In 2008 he won the King of the Ring, and he was terrorizing the WWE universe. He had still the authority. He was feuding with Ken Kennedy, and many speculated that all of this would culminate in a world title reign. Sadly, he failed another. He violated another wellness policy, was suspended for 60 days this time, and that just left us with the big question: what could have been?
What could have been? Oh God! Like much of the list, the man fantastic on the mic, but just unfortunately, personal demons got ahead of him. But he is our number one wrestler who never captured a major title.
Testament to how great he is. There are numerous reports that his matches are shown to wrestlers in training to teach them the proper psychology of wrestling matches. He's currently head of global talent scouting and head of talent development in WWE. He has so much to teach. He understands wrestling, the in-ring work, like probably none other. And sad he never captured the belt.
Sadly. But guys, that was our top 10 wrestlers who never captured a world championship belt. Let us know in the comments if you think that maybe you would have put one of our wrestlers in a different position on the list, or someone that we may have left out that you would think should have been on the list as well.